Now, with the objects that we want to render and make 3D and show off the form, we've got to use some tone, okay? So these are our tools. We've got a grey one, cool grey one, and we're going to use the wide end, the chisel edge of it, and it gives us about a centimetre wide mark, okay? Then we've got a cool grey 3. See how it changes in tone, it's getting darker. Then we've got a cool grey 5. It's a little bit charcoaly. It's not black. Last year if you did this you got a black marker, so maybe you still have that, which may be helpful later on. Once we do layers we get some tones in between those. And sometimes it's hard not to do layers because as we apply it we have to go over and fix things. But this kind of starts to direct and show us where our light, how the tone might apply to an actual object. Our light might come from behind on the left or behind on the right. One of the front surfaces is going to be the darkest. We're just sticking with that rule at the moment because it's easiest to work with and apply. We can start to mix it up as we start to become more skilled. Okay? So if my light's coming from the left here, this surface is going to be the darkest, this one is going to be medium, and this one's going to be light. So there is some change. We can apply tones with our marker to make our form look 3D. We don't just have to use pencil. Okay, so I'm going to work with this form first, and I'm just going to work with the 2 light greys, not the cool grey at the moment. Okay, so we're working just with 2 tools, and I'm going to start with the darkest tone. It's going to be somewhere along that if you think that is dark to medium, so we've got a bit of a tonal grid there. I'm going to work from the inside out, because sometimes, especially if we're rendering on a separate piece of paper, we can cut out the form and put it onto something else, okay? If you want to, you can fill in the edges with the marker so you've got a bit of a buffer, and you're going to fill it in and you're going to do 2 or 3 layers and hopefully become quite smooth, okay, not stripy. I'm going to turn the page around. Okay, I'm going to work from the inside out, make sure it's clear, and I'm going to try to make sure that my movement is as comfortable as possible for me, okay? So I'm kind of ghosting it first, checking which way this is going to be more comfortable for me. And it's quite important, see how I'm not getting the marker down flat and it's becoming a little bit, it's not a full rectangle, so I will have to do a second layer because it is a bit messy. So that means that this layer is going to have a 4th layer, and I'm going to actually flip it around the back and do it on the back because the front of the paper has been saturated in ink already, and this is going to make it a little bit more solid. There are 2 different tones here. Now we're going to work with the grey. This light grey, cool grey 1. Figuring out that I'm going to start on the inside and work my way out. It's a little bit easier. Making sure that the pen is on an angle and it's going to apply evenly in those kind of rectangles. Okay, there we go. We have a form. It's got 3 tones. My light's clearly coming from that side. Once the ink has dried, I can add on a little bit more tonal change with a bit of hatching or shading with my pencil so that there is a bit of variation on the surface. Okay, thinking that light does travel over surfaces and there might be a little bit of change happening, and maybe this side of the surface is going to catch more light. Okay, so If you are starting with markers, you can stick with your real rectangular forms. If not, you could move on to something that has an angle on it. We go back to this form really quickly. Don't have any dark outlines, do I? Don't have anything. We might want to separate it and kind of clean up those edges by putting on a darker edge around the outside. But we don't need to separate those surfaces because the tone does that. Okay? So this shape. I'm going to stick with that same light source. These are going to be that tone, but they're going to be getting a little bit lighter at some points, and then this is going to be this dark tone. So there's only going to be kind of 2 tones approximately. So here we go. I'm going to fill in, create a bit of a buffer for myself. I'm going to turn this upside down. No, maybe not. Change my mind. But I am going to work up. Getting my marker at the right angle. Just going to work with this tone at the moment. It's a bit trickier filling in angled surfaces, so because this one is the trickiest to shade in, that's why I've selected my light source to come from the left, okay, because I can do multiple layers on that to get that dark tone. I'm going to just stick with working with my 1 for the light and start down the bottom here and walk towards myself. It's a little bit easier to see what I'm doing. I'm going to try to get a little bit of a gradient happening on here. I'm going to change the number of layers on the surface. So I've nearly saturated. See, this looks really wet there. You have a bit of a sheen on the page. Now there's a bit of a gradient, and we can see that it's not a flat surface, it is more an angle and it's got a bit of a gradient. So that would be your next step after you've done 3 different tones and added a little bit of pencil on there. You're going to try out creating a gradient on one of those surfaces that are a bit of an angle, and then flicking into thin and thick lines and a little bit of pencil shading to create some variation on your tone, on your surfaces. Cool? These markers are tricky to get used to, okay? So even I stuffed up today at certain points because I wasn't using the marker correctly. So that's why we've done a whole lot of random objects to render before we start doing our chairs. Try to draw some objects that maybe are similar to some of your chairs as well if you get finished on some of the shapes. I'm not expecting you to render all these shapes today, but there's something to work with over the next 2 lessons, okay?